My name is Clarissa Goh. I am a trauma nurse. I've seen things that would break most people. Blood, pain, the thin line between life and death. But honestly, nothing prepared me for the truth. It all started with a simple photograph. It was in an old shoebox buried deep in my late mother's closet. The picture was faded and crumpled. It showed a group of nurses standing proudly in front of a building. The building was unmistakable. The structure with Singapore's history. It was Old Changi Hospital. My mother was in the photograph. She was young and beautiful, contrast to the grim building behind her. I had asked my mother about her past many times. She always said she was a secretary before I was born. She never once mentioned being a nurse. She never mentioned Old Changi Hospital. Why would she hide and lie about her past? I asked to myself. I held photograph in my hands, the glossy paper now a fragile artifact of a hidden life. My mother, Evelyn Goh. I had to know what her secrets were. The Old Changi Hospital in the background was calling me, a silent invitation to a story that was never told. The image haunted my waking thoughts and my dreams. Sudden flashes appeared in my mind, flickering. I saw my mother's smile, but black figures without faces around her, smiling with sharp teeth. Who or what are they? What was my mother hiding? I looked closer at the other nurses in the photo, their faces mysterious. Who were they? What's their secret? I felt a powerful, undeniable pull towards that place. I need to understand the woman who raised me, the woman I thought I knew, and Old Changi Hospital was waiting for me. My investigation began. I searched the hospital archives. I made phone calls to the records department. I first contacted the National Archives, requesting employment records for Evelyn Goh at Old Changi Hospital. The response came a week later. An official email, no record found. It was a dead end. How could there be no record? The photograph was proof. She was there. I asked myself, it didn't make any sense. Next, I tried to track down a registry of nurses from that era. I spent hours online digging through digitized documents and old forums. I called nursing associations, hoping someone might have a list. Each call ended the same way. Sorry, we can't help you. Those records are incomplete. Evelyn Goh? The name doesn't ring a bell. It felt like I was chasing a ghost in a system designed to forget. It was as if someone or something had deliberately erased her, wiped her from history. This wasn't just a case of misplaced files, this was a cover-up. I felt frustrated. I even tried to find the other nurses from the photograph, but without names, it was an impossible task. They were just smiling faces, frozen in time, their identities lost to the decades. I showed the photo to older nurses at my own hospital, hoping for a flicker of recognition. They would look at it, their eyes filled with a mix of nostalgia, pity, and sadness. They recognized the hospital, of course. They shared stories, rumors, and odd warnings, but no one recognized my mother. Every official door was slammed shut in my face. The lack of answers only fueled my obsession. Something definitely happened at that Old Changi Hospital. Something bad. And my mother was at the center of it. If the official world wouldn't give me answers, I would have to find them myself. I'm going to go to the Old Changi Hospital alone at night. The night of June 16, year 2025, was heavy and humid. The air was thick, carrying the scent of rain and decay as I approached the abandoned hospital. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded the property, a flimsy deterrent against the curious. I found a gap, a place where the metal had been peeled back like a wound. I slipped through, my heart pounding against my ribs. The grounds were overgrown. Weeds choked the pathways. Vines snaked up the walls like green veins on a corpse. The main building loomed before me, a dark silhouette against the moonless sky. Its windows were like hollow eye sockets, staring into nothingness. The silence was unnerving. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, expectant silence. I pushed open a creaking door and stepped inside. The air instantly changed. It was cold, a deep, unnatural cold that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. The smell of mildew and dust filled my lungs. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a scene of utter dereliction. Peeling paint hung from the walls in long strips. A gurney sat in the middle of the hallway, its wheels rusted in place. It looked as if it had been left in a hurry. Every shadow seemed to move. Every distant creak of the old building sounded like a footstep. I am a woman of science, a nurse. I believe in what I can see and touch. But in that place, my beliefs were being challenged. I walked deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. My footsteps echoed unnervingly, the only sound in a world of silence. I passed by old operating theaters. The tables were still there, stained with things I didn't want to identify. Glass cabinets were shattered, their contents strewn across the floor. I saw patient files, their pages yellowed and warped by moisture. Names and dates, lives and deaths, all left to rot. This place was a tomb of forgotten stories. I could feel the weight of all the pain and suffering that had occurred here. It clung to the air, a palpable energy that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I felt like an intruder, a trespasser on sacred, sorrowful ground. My flashlight beam danced across a sign on the wall. Mortuary. A shiver ran down my spine. A part of me screamed to turn back, to run from this place and never return. But the image of my mother's face in that photograph pushed me forward. I had to know. I had to understand what she had experienced in this place of shadows. Why had she hidden this part of her life? The answer was here, somewhere in the darkness. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on my flashlight, and continued my descent into the abyss of Old Changi Hospital. The building had spirits watching me in the dark corners. I was sure of it. I explored for what felt like hours, moving from one decaying ward to the next. They were all the same. Rows of empty beds, overturned furniture, a profound sense of loss. But then I found something different. At the end of a long, dark corridor on the second floor, I saw it. A doorway that was completely sealed. Heavy wooden planks had been nailed across the entrance. A thick, rusted chain was wrapped around the handles, secured with a massive padlock. Above the door, a faded sign was barely visible. The paint was chipped, but I could make out the words. Ward 13. There was no Ward 13 in any of the hospital floor plans I had managed to find online. It shouldn't exist. It was a place that had been officially erased, just like my mother's records. A cold dread settled in my stomach. This was it. This had to be the place. Why seal a ward so completely? What were they trying to keep locked inside? Or perhaps, what were they trying to keep out? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that my mother's secret was behind that door. I examined the barricade. It was old, but solid. There was no way I could break through it. But as my flashlight scanned the edges of the doorframe, I saw something. A small piece of paper, yellowed with age, wedged between the door and the frame, almost completely hidden from view. My fingers trembled as I carefully worked it free. It was a patient admission slip. It was brittle, and the ink was faded, but the details were still legible. The ward number was clearly printed at the top, 13. The patient's name was Goh, Clarissa, my name, and the admission date was my birthday. My blood ran cold. This was impossible. I had never been a patient here. My mother had always told me I was born in a different hospital across the island. I looked at the slip again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. At the bottom of the form, in the section for the admitting nurse, was a signature. The handwriting was familiar. It was the same elegant script from the birthday card she gave me every year. It was my mother's signature, Evelyn Goh. The proof was in my hands. She had worked here, in this specific hidden ward, and somehow it was all connected to me. As I stood there, clutching the impossible admission slip, the atmosphere in the corridor shifted. The heavy silence was broken. A sound started, so faint at first I thought I was imagining it. A whisper. It seemed to come from the walls themselves, a sibilant hiss that slithered through the air. I couldn't make out any words. It was just a sound, a breath from the decaying building. I froze, my flashlight beam cutting a frantic path through the darkness. The corridor was empty. I was alone. But the whispering grew louder, closer. It felt like someone was standing right behind me, their lips just inches from my ear. I backed away from the sealed door of Ward 13, my heart hammering in my chest. Then another sound joined the whispers, the faint, unmistakable cry of a baby. It was distant, echoing from deep within the sealed ward. It was a sound filled with distress and fear. As a nurse, my instincts screamed at me to help, but my rational mind was screaming in terror. There couldn't be a baby in there. The ward had been sealed for decades. The sound was an echo, a memory trapped in the very fabric of the building, a psychic imprint of a past tragedy. The electronic equipment I had brought with me began to act erratically. My digital camera, which I was using to document everything, started to glitch. The screen flickered wildly, displaying distorted images of the hallway. Static filled the audio recorder, and then, through the static, a voice. A clear, female voice. "Leave this place," it said. The voice was filled with a desperate urgency. It was a warning. My phone, which had been fully charged, suddenly died. I was cut off. isolated in the darkness with only the whispers and the ghost of a crying child for company. The final straw was the apparition. For a split second, as my flashlight beam swept across the far end of the corridor, I saw it, a figure, a woman in a white nurse's uniform. She was translucent, a shimmering outline against the peeling wall. She looked directly at me, her face a mask of sorrow. And then, as quickly as she appeared, she was gone. It was my mother. I knew it was her. It was the face from the photograph, but filled with a pain I had never seen before. She wasn't haunting me. She was trying to warn me, to get me out before it was too late. I stumbled back, my mind just reeling from what I had just seen. The whispers, the crying, the voice on the recorder, and now, a full-bodied apparition of my own mother. This was beyond anything I could explain. Driven by a desperate need for more answers, I fumbled with my audio recorder, trying to get it to work again. I hit the record button, holding it up to the sealed door of Ward 13. "Who are you?" I whispered into the darkness. "What do you want? Mom? Is that you?" I played it back. Nothing but static. I tried again, asking about the admission slip. "Why is my name on this form?" I asked, my voice trembling. I pressed play. Again there was only the harsh crackle of static, but then underneath the noise I heard it, a voice faint and distorted as if coming from a great distance. "Not supposed to be here. A mistake." It was a man's voice, cold and clinical. Then another voice, a woman's voice, frantic and pleading. "Please! She's just a baby! Don't do this!" It was my mother's voice. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I felt a strange sense of vertigo, as if the hallway itself was twisting and warping around me. The air grew thick and heavy. The lights in the hallway began to flicker. Not my flashlight, but the old dead ceiling fixtures. They flashed on and off, illuminating the corridor in brief, terrifying strobes. In those flashes of light, the scene around me changed. The decay was gone. The paint was fresh. The gurneys were new. Nurses and doctors in old-fashioned uniforms rushed past me, their faces grim. They didn't see me. It was like I was a ghost in their time. I was witnessing a memory, a moment from the hospital's past, replaying itself right in front of me. This was a time loop, a residual haunting of an epic scale. In one of these flashes, I saw the door to Ward 13. It was open. Inside, I saw a room that looked like a nursery, but it was cold and sterile, more like a laboratory. And I saw my mother. She was standing over a crib, her back to me. A doctor in a white coat stood beside her, holding a clipboard. He was speaking in that same cold, clinical voice from the recorder. "The experiment is a failure, Evelyn. We have to terminate the subject." My mother turned, and I saw her face. It was wrought with anguish. "No," she pleaded. "She's my daughter. You can't." The lights went out, plunging me back into the darkness and decay of the present. The vision faded, leaving me trembling in the silent dark corridor. The air was still thick with the residual energy of the past. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. "The experiment is a failure. Terminate the subject." What experiment? Who was the subject? I looked down at the admission slip in my hand. Patient. Go, Clarissa. The horrible truth began to dawn on me, a chilling realization that settled deep in my soul. The baby in the crib. The subject of the experiment, it was me. I wasn't just born here, I was created here, or at least I was part of something unnatural. I pressed my ear against the rough planks of the sealed door, desperate for more. The whispers started again, but this time they were clearer. I could hear fragments of conversations, echoes of the past bleeding through the veil of time. I heard my mother's voice, arguing, begging. "There has to be another way," she cried. The doctor's voice was firm, devoid of emotion. "The protocol is clear. Anomalies must be contained. The temporal displacement is too unstable. She is a paradox. She cannot exist." A paradox? Temporal displacement? The words made no sense, yet they filled me with a primal fear. The scene flickered back into existence, another brief, violent tear in time. I was inside the ward. My mother was holding a baby. Me. She was wrapping me in a blanket, her movements frantic. The doctor was trying to stop her. "Evelyn, don't be a fool. You know what will happen if you take her out of the containment field. You will be trapped in the echo." My mother looked at him, her eyes blazing with a fierce, protective fire. "I don't care," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "She deserves a life. A real life. Not this." She clutched me tighter and ran from the room, leaving the doctor standing in stunned silence. The vision dissolved, and I was left staring at the sealed door once more. I finally understood. Ward 13 wasn't a normal hospital ward. It was some kind of laboratory. They were experimenting with something dangerous, something beyond their control. Time itself. And I was the result of a failed experiment. I was the anomaly. My mother wasn't just a nurse here. She was a participant. And on her last shift, she broke every rule to save me from a fate I couldn't even comprehend. She rescued me from this place, but in doing so, she had sealed her own fate. The full weight of the truth crashed down on me. My mother had made a terrible bargain. To give me a normal life, she had to sacrifice her own past. She had to erase herself from the records, sever all ties to this place, and live with the constant fear that her secret would be discovered. But it was more than that. The doctor's words about being trapped in the echo now made a terrifying kind of sense. My mother didn't just leave the hospital. A part of her was still here. Her spirit, her energy was forever tied to this location, bound by the sacrifice she made. The apparition I saw, the voice on the recorder, the whispers in the walls, it was all her. She wasn't a vengeful spirit. She was a guardian, a protector, still watching over me even after her death. She was trying to warn me away, to keep me from discovering the truth that would put me in danger. She had spent her entire life protecting me from this place, and now, even from beyond the grave, she was still on duty. She had traded her peace for my existence. The love behind that sacrifice was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that left me breathless. Suddenly, the building seemed to come alive with a new, malevolent energy. The whispers were no longer just my mother's warnings. They became a cacophony of angry, distorted voices. The cold in the hallway intensified, biting at my skin. The playful glitches of my equipment turned hostile. My flashlight began to flicker violently, threatening to plunge me into total darkness. It felt like the hospital itself, the entity that ran the experiment, now knew I was here. It knew I had uncovered its secret. The paradox was back where it started, and the system wanted to correct the error. It wanted to contain the anomaly. It wanted me. A powerful force slammed the mortuary door down the hall shut. A disembodied scream echoed from the floor below. I knew I had to get out. My mother had given me a life, and I couldn't let her sacrifice be in vain by becoming another ghost trapped within these cursed walls. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted through the dark, decaying corridors, the angry whispers chasing me, clawing at my heels. I could feel the building fighting me, the very air seeming to push against me, trying to hold me back, to pull me into its temporal prison forever. I burst out of the hospital's main entrance, gasping for the humid night air. It felt like breaking the surface after being held underwater for too long. I didn't stop running until I was back at my car, my hands shaking too much to fit the key in the ignition. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The dark, hulking form of Old Changi Hospital receded into the night. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of light in a second-floor window. A single, solitary light in a place that had no power. A final, silent goodbye from the guardian of Ward 13. I escaped that night, but I did not escape unchanged. The world feels different now. Thinner. I see things in the corners of my eyes. I hear whispers on the edge of silence. I am forever marked by what I learned within those walls. I carry the weight of my mother's sacrifice and the terrifying knowledge of my own existence. I am a paradox, a glitch in time, saved by a mother's love. The photograph that started my journey now sits on my desk. I no longer see a young woman with a secret. I see a hero. I see my savior. I can never share this story with the authorities. Who would believe me? They would call me crazy, traumatized, or a liar. The wall of silence that I first encountered was not just bureaucracy. It was a deliberate quarantine, designed to keep the hospital's true nature hidden from the world. They know what's in there, and they are content to let it rot, hoping its secrets will rot with it. But some things don't rot. They wait, they fester, and they hunger for those who are foolish enough to come looking. So this is my warning. To the urban explorers, the ghost hunters, the curious souls drawn to the allure of forgotten places. Stay away from Old Changi Hospital. Some doors are sealed for a reason. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. You may think you are searching for ghosts, for a thrill, for a story to tell. But you might find something far worse. You might find a truth that rewrites your entire reality. You might stumble into an echo you can never escape. I am living proof. I went searching for my mother's past and I found it. But I also found that the price of knowledge can be a piece of your own soul. If you're watching this, it means you've already heard the voice. The more people who know what's inside Old Changi Hospital, the harder it is for it to choose someone new. So click the subscribe button below. Not just for more stories, but to stay ahead of what's really happening in places we thought were closed. Click the like below and share this video. Someone else might need this warning before another victim make their way to Old Changi Hospital. You've seen enough to know this place isn't done recruiting.